The liquid culture.
All right, everybody, we have made it to part 3 of the Sparkling Wine Challenge. Part 3 today for the Gruet run here of sparkling wines in an effort to teach you guys a little bit more about the sparkling wine method of Method Champenois, traditional method, classic method, and teach you a little bit about some of the jargon you might find on the labels. So one of the other things that I wanted to include, which I didn't include on the first 2, I already had the bottles popped and open, wanted to include a little tutorial for some of you on how to properly open a bottle of sparkling wine. So I know a lot of times this might seem like something that's pretty, basic and, not something that anybody needs to be taught how to do, but in other instances, some people just, aren't really sure the proper method of doing certain things. And again, we don't have to be too pretentious about this. The wine can be open however you feel is necessary to open the wine. I'm, absolutely guilty of popping, corks out, as well as, sabering a bottle or two. But for the predominant amount, the majority of the bottles of sparkling wine that I open, I like to open in the proper method, which I'll show you guys here. So remove the foil. You've got the wire cage. You want to hold your thumb on top of the cork here. I've had, back in the day in college and such, have had many times where I've been undoing a wire cage and for whatever reason, the pressure in the bottle built up too much and the cork comes flying out and you had no idea that was about to happen. That can be dangerous. So what you want to do, thumb on top, start undoing the wire cage here. Once the wire cage is open, leave it on. Loosen it up, but leave it on. Keep that thumb on top, and guys, what you just want to do is grasp around the cage here and just start to twist. If you start to twist, the pressure will slowly start to remove the cork from the neck. And what you want to do is you don't want to hear that big pop that you generally hear, on TV and shit like that. You want to hear the faintest, oh here, mic's right here, the faintest. That's what you want to hear. And that's it. What that does is it doesn't create this huge kind of pressure buildup that just kind of explodes a bunch of wasted wine out the neck. It doesn't harm the wine in any way. It's safe. It's quiet. That's really the way that you want to open the majority of your sparkling wine bottles. But again, if you just want to take a knife and just rip the neck off, that's more power to you. So we have moved on here to rosé, guys. Gruet Rosé, extended tirage rosé. So let's talk about rosé sparkling wine production, and let's talk about what does extended tirage mean. So something that's different with this wine than we had with the first 2 wines. So our first 2 wines were both vintage. Our first 2 wines were both Blanc de Blanc. Vintage made in exceptional years in Champagne, but in New Mexico, I'm sure they can do a vintage wine more frequently than they do in Champagne, which leads to a little bit more affordable pricing on the vintage bottles, which makes them a value play. Blanc de Blanc, 100% Chardonnay. This is neither of those. This is a non-vintage wine, which means it's a blend of wines made from various vintages, and it is a rosé. So it certainly is not a Blanc de Blanc because there's got to be some red wine grape in here in order to give it this beautiful rosé color. Almost kind of like a salmon, a little bit of an orangey tint to it, which quite nice. So not a Blanc de Blanc, there is Pinot Noir in here, and in fact this wine is made with 100% Pinot Noir. In any normal instance that would be called a Blanc de Noir, white wine made with Pinot Noir, dark black, fruit. But this is a rosé, so therefore it is not a white wine, so therefore no Blanc de Noir. It is a rosé wine made with 100% Pinot Noir. So, it's not too dark, so, pressed after minimal time on skin contact, still wine was made, and then we went through our standard method of Champenois method production to make this a sparkling wine. If you haven't caught EPS 1, and I believe we even talk about it a little bit in part 2, check those out to, really kind of educate yourself up on the method of sparkling wine production in Champagne. So what we have here, guys, rosé wine made with Pinot Noir, extended tirage. What does that mean? So tirage is the time that the wines spend. Okay, well, I guess we are going to back it up a little bit, talk a little bit about production. Still wine goes in the bottle, extra yeast, extra sugar, bottle cap on its neck there, on a rack. Over the course of time, what happens is that sugar, that yeast eats away at that extra sugar. You force carbonate the bottle, but you have those yeast cells that start to die off after the alcohol has gotten too high. No more sugars to be eaten. Yeast dies, falls to the neck of the bottle there. The longer the time the wine spends on those yeast cells, the more of that yeast characteristic is going to be absorbed into the wine. That method is called tirage. So all wines made in the method Champenois classic method go through tirage of some time frame. Generally can be anywhere from 6 months to 3 years. This wine is an extended tirage wine, which means for Gruet, that means that this wine was aged on those yeast cells, those lees, for a minimum of 2 years. This wine sat with those lees in contact with the wine for a minimum of 2 years before it was disgorged, dosed, capped, corked, and then sent off for shipment. So what you can expect with a wine like this, extended tirage, if you ever see that on a label for sparkling wine, whether that be in Champagne or a domestic sparkler from somewhere else, Cremant de Loire, Cremant from anywhere, that what you can expect from that is there's going to be an extra bit of that yeasty breadiness that you get from those lees. So if that's something that you like, if you are a big time, if you've tasted, you've tasted Cava, you've tasted Prosecco, you've tasted Champagne, and you've come to realize that Champagne is your favorite, that's probably because you like that yeasty, bready, toasty characteristic that you get in that method of sparkling wine. So you definitely get it here. You definitely get that bready toastiness with this wine, but being as it is a rosé wine, what differentiates this one a little bit, I think, from the Blanc de Blancs that we tasted in part 1 is you still have that real nice bready, yeasty, toasty thing, but this one's almost like if you cut some nice kind of fresh, ripe, not overripe, not underripe, just right at that kind of sweet spot strawberries. Slice those up, put it on that nice little English muffin that you had with that lemon curd on it that we talked about in part 1. That's what you would get with this wine. So that lemon kind of goes away and more kind of red fruit, red berries, kind of strawberry, raspberry kind of start to show up a little bit more with this one, but you still have that nice bready, toasty character. But a pretty faint nose, honestly. This one doesn't have as big of a nose as the wines in the first 2 parts had. So I would say right off the bat, of all 3 of the wines that we've tasted in this 3-part series, this one easily has the most effervescence on the palate, as well as I think the most acidity. My mouth is really watering right now, but it's got that smooth creaminess that we had with the wine in part 1. You have this really well-balanced mouthfeel here. That's really kind of taking me through this nice kind of flavor profile. It's kind of like extending, I mean, the finish is still lingering here. that creamy mouthfeel, that extended tirage, that extra oomph that you get from those dead yeast cells, those lees, really kind of takes you the distance with this wine to where you're having this kind of toasted English muffin with this kind of almost more like cream cheese on this one with some strawberries on it. Or, I mean, it's not strawberry jam, guys, though. It's like fresh strawberries that you've sliced. English muffin, nicely toasted, small little smattering of schmeal in there, and then some nice little sliced fresh strawberries on there. This is I mean, this is a brunch banger, dude. This is a big time brunch banger. I would drink bottles on bottles of this on a rooftop somewhere on a Saturday morning with some chicken and waffles, and just absolutely go to town. I mean, my mouth is watering. Great amount of effervescence with this. It would cut through any sort of big, heavy, rich brunch food that you're eating. A lot of good flavor. That long, extended finish would really carry it through to where, if you're sitting at, brunch and you're drinking some, crappy bottle of Andre or something like that, and it's just, you get tired of it after, the first, glass or two. This one has such power and such staying power. It lingers on that palate. Really enjoyable. I mean, this is a glass of sunshine right here, guys. I would be all over a bottle of this for brunch, and maybe 2 bottles of this for brunch. It's a little pricier than the first 2 wines, so $34. Again, the extended tirage rosé might not be as readily available as the Gruet, just kind of standard Brut Rosé bottling, but that standard Brut Rosé bottling is probably half the price of this. So I'm telling you guys, I mean, the point of this series of videos was to educate you a little bit on champagne-style wine production in the form of a domestic sparkler. I wanted to teach you guys some of the jargon, some of the lingo, some of the production processes, so that you have a better idea of like what goes into which style of wine, so you can kind of pick out what matches your palate best. But really, the kind of part B of my motivation behind this was to introduce you guys to Gruet, because I started drinking Gruet sparkling wine about 2 years ago, and then was fortunate enough to visit their tasting room in Santa Fe that's been over a year now. And their wines consistently blow me away. Even their base level, brut, non-vintage, sparkling wine you can find at almost any liquor store, grocery store that has a good wine selection. They blow me away every time. And their price point is outstanding. So highly rec the next time you're out looking for bottles of sparkling wine for brunch, for, you got friends coming over for a baby shower, and you're wanting to make mimosas. I mean, it's that good to where it can be drank on its own, but you don't feel bad about putting it into not this wine, but their standard brut. You don't feel bad about putting it in mimosas, because it's like a $12 to $15 bottle. Highly rec Gruet. Hope you guys learned a little bit more about sparkling wine to help you kind of make your decisions on your sparkling wine purchases going forward. And I think that's it. Try to keep them nice and short. What are we at? 13 minutes on this one. We've been a little longer than I was hoping, but I think we're good. All right, guys. Appreciate you being here. We'll see you on the next episode of The Liquid Culture. Catch you guys later. Bye-bye.